The air was thick with the smell of rain and disappointment. My shoes squeaked as I walked out of the gallery, the soles already slick and cold from stepping in puddles. Artificial light spilled weakly through the glass doors behind me, washing my wet figure in sickly yellow before I let the door swing shut and cut me off from the echo of laughter and polite, pitiful conversation. Raindrops splattered against my glasses, blurring the world. The familiar ache settled in my chest, heavy as it had ever been. Under the thin awning, I paused. My white button-down, so crisp an hour ago, clung to my back. I couldn't remember if I had ever believed I truly belonged here, in this part of Mexico City, and now I was sure I never would. The rejection letter crumpled in my hand, the words innovative concept but unrealistic still burned onto the back of my eyelids. Couldn't they see what I saw? My idea was solid. More than that, vital. Yet the committee, heads shaking, lips pressed in concern, had decided otherwise. I let the rain fall over me, soaking through paper, skin, my forced composure. A familiar voice rang out, hesitant, as if afraid to approach this sodden loser. Emilia? It was Tia Matilde, my mother's older sister, always beautifully dressed, always ready with an opinion. She stood under the next awning, untouched by the storm, dabbing at her lips with a cloth napkin as if even the idea of rain might stain her. Beside her was my cousin Santi, whose interests never strayed far from trendy startups and crypto ventures. "Are you all right?" Matilde called, her voice shrill and laced with worry, or perhaps with embarrassment for me. I gave the only answer I could, "Estoy bien." It came out unconvincing, a thin smile on my lips. She edged closer, eyeing the half-crumpled letter in my hand. "¿Qué pasó, mi niña?" she asked, with just enough sweetness to let me know the endearment was out of pity. "They didn't like it," I said, forcing a shrug. "You know how it is." Santi snorted. His umbrella was too small for both of them. Mathilde clung to his arm regardless. "You're always chasing something, Ems. Why not just," he gestured vaguely, "apply for a normal job? Google is opening their Mexico office soon." I should have walked away. Instead, I searched their faces for something that wasn't there, understanding, or maybe even pride. But there was only bemused sympathy. Inside, the laughter from the gallery ticked on, warm and distant. Mathilde dabbed the corners of her eyes, in case the rain might have dared come near. "You know your mama worries. It's good to dream big, but the world isn't so forgiving." The urge to retort was strong. Instead, I folded the rejection letter neatly and placed it in my bag, swallowing bitterness as if it were medicine. Maybe they were right. Maybe the idea of designing a self-learning algorithm to diagnose rare genetic diseases in underserved populations was just another frivolous delusion. But I could not admit that, not even to myself. I trudged away alone, water pooling in my shoes, the city lights bending and bleeding in the rain. For months after, everything felt heavy. I worked in the small rented office I shared with 3 other dreamers, artists, an architect, and a grad student specializing in some esoteric branch of marine biology. Our little haven was tucked above a bakery where the scent of bread fought daily battles with the dust from the street below. At night, our laptops glowed like campfires, illuminating the gaunt faces of people determined not to give in just yet. My idea, though, haunted me. At every turn, another closed door, another tight frown from a funding committee. I knew the science was solid. A pattern recognition AI that could cross-reference tiny genetic mutations in patients' DNA, trained on a wider net of public health data than ever before. Diagnostics, affordable and lightning fast, for hospitals with crumbling walls and flickering power. I pleaded for every peso. I sent hundreds of proposals, universities, venture capitalists, even a government grant from the Secretariat de Salud. Only silence, or the careful rhetoric of decline. Returned. At home, Papa filled silences with questions. Emilia, have you considered translating your resume to English? You studied at UNAM, but you could work in Texas, maybe for Pfizer. Mama wrung her hands and prepared elaborate meals, which I could tell she hoped would keep me in the kitchen, grounded in something real. My sisters smirked and tittered, mentioning their steady jobs, teacher, public notary, the kinds of things my aunts understood. Not living paycheck to paycheck, not writing code until their joints stiffened. The laughter from rejection night crept into my dreams sometimes, echoing in galleries I'd never set foot in. So I learned patience. I learned to sleep little, eat less, and pare down my needs to only what was essential. It became a point of pride that I could go without and still show up at dawn to hack away at lines of code. More than once, I caught my own reflection gaunt, red-rimmed eyes, a tremble in my hands, but I pressed on. Each tiny victory, a line of code working, a volunteer doctor calling back, felt enormous. It was Luisa, my friend from UNAM, who finally made a connection. My uncle knows a foundation, she said over coffee one gray morning. They fund tech for public good, especially for Latin America. I merely hugged her. Instead, I poured every bit of myself into the application, painstaking technical explanations, data collected from clinics in Oaxaca and Monterrey, and most importantly, patient stories. A child who'd nearly died before his rare enzyme disorder was discovered by luck. An elder whose diagnosis came years too late for effective treatment. This time, weeks later, the answer was yes. A grant significant by my standards, enough to finally gather a proper team and servers that didn't crash twice a day. I called Papa. Me dieron el apoyo, Papa, I said, barely holding my voice steady. He paused, as if turning the words over, unfamiliar. Eso es bueno, hija. For a moment, silent pride filtered through the line. Then his voice returned to routine. Recuerda cuidar tus horas de sueño. I thanked him and let the phone call end. I knew better than to expect fanfare. But there was air in my lungs that night, relief sharp as mountain wind. Progress was slow. I hired a software engineer, Anna, who left her well-paid job in the U.S. because her brother had nearly died of misdiagnosed lupus. We worked in 12-hour shifts, weekends bleeding into weekdays. The AI, which we now called IMAI, Inteligencia Médica Autónomamente Inteligente, began to breathe, learning to sift through genetic markers and spit out results in clear Spanish and English. The first real test came at a rural clinic in the Sierra Norte. An 8-hour bus ride over washboard roads. A child 8 years old with persistent fevers and rashes. No specialist for miles. With IMAI's help, the local doctor uploaded the DNA sequence from a borrowed machine, and the algorithm flagged a rare familial fever syndrome. Previously undiagnosed but treatable. The medicine was cheap, and a local pharmacy had it. When the boy smiled, color returning to his cheeks, I nearly wept. All those gallery nights and crumpled letters seemed far away. We wrote to the foundation, sent the data, and soon more clinics were interested. Still, the wider world moved slowly. IMAI was unproven, too ambitious. Ministry officials nodded during presentations, but never followed up. Always that lingering skepticism waiting to pounce. There were moments I still wanted to vanish. When we lost a server's worth of data to a power outage, I spent hours in an empty stairwell, twisting my hands until the skin snapped. But Anna showed up with tamales and a new hard drive the next day. Each small morning proved we weren't quitting. Meanwhile, my family offered slivers of support, dishes sent to my door, awkward questions at Sunday lunches. The sense that my failure or success was a distant curiosity. Then the pandemic struck, and everything changed. Local clinics were drowning in patients with strange symptoms, overlapping conditions, no time to call in specialists. Suddenly, a tool that could, within minutes, suggest differential diagnoses using only a laptop and basic input was more than just a curiosity. It was a lifeline. Within weeks, IMAI was being used in clinics from Durango to Chiapas. Journalists began calling, a national paper published a profile, and funding offers arrived not just from NGOs, but from tech firms wanting to buy us out. I turned them down, all of them. I would not let IMAI become another product. Gated behind subscription fees that my people couldn't afford. For the first time, Mama called crying. "People are talking about you, mija. Your uncle saw your name on the news." But the greatest test was yet to come. My grandmother's birthday loomed. Every year, all the extended family returned, from various corners of the city and from Monterrey and Puebla. For the first time in a decade, my work was all anyone seemed to mention. The gossip had filtered through WhatsApp groups and old-school phone trees. "Amelia, will you be coming?" Matilde asked in a group chat. Casual, but with an edge of curiosity. I typed my response, hesitated, then pressed send. "Sí, claro. I'd love to share what I've been working on, if there's interest." Santi replied first with a thumbs-up emoji. My sister added, "Just don't bring one of your robots, okay?" I expected the ridicule to sting. Instead, I found I was strangely calm. I knew what I had built. I knew who I'd helped. The day arrived heavy with humidity, the city vibrating with traffic and the scent of frying tortillas. The family house in Coyoacán overflowed with people, music, and stories.